Yes.
It's probably one of that, and that's 30 years later.
That's right. Where is Kevin Sorbo? Where's Lucy Lawless nowadays? Because back in the day, you had Hercules and you had Xena the Warrior Princess. They were a package deal back in the day.
She was in a major character in Battlestar Galactica.
Huh.
I think the last, there was some show, big series she's in. Maybe a Netflix series or something. She's on something.
Nice. Wait a second. You got to come in here with that. Live from the AOC studios, deep in the heart of downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. Let me see this for a second.
How's it going, everybody? Zydeco Paul here.
Yeah, Zydeco Paul here. Now, I don't have any spoons, so hold on. Wait. I need something a little bit sturdier. Let's try.
Wait, how about keys? Oh. Going on? This man's trying to take my job.
There you go. That's
Woo!
it. Nice. Give me one more key.
Let's
see. If we have two keys, maybe.
All you need is a tank.
Hey, mama. Oh, papa. Zydeco so facile. Zydeco so facile.
Yeah.
I still got it.
Yeah.
I can still, after all these years, I can still keep some
Heck
sort of a.
Those are yours.
No, thank you.
All right. See y'all later.
Live from the AOC studios, deep in the heart of downtown Lafayette, Louisiana. It's fun. It's excitement. It's that was an impromptu frottoir jam right there. Who knows what else? We may have someone walk in with an accordion. After all, it is the weekend of Les Festivals Acadiens et Créoles here in Lafayette. Who knows? Maybe if you have an accordion and you know where we are, come on down. It's the Saints in a thriller today. It's Colin Kaepernick back in the news. We'll talk about him. And speaking of disrespecting the flag, if we're going to protest the NFL, we're going to protest the White House. I'll explain where we're going with that in just a few minutes. Tonight, it is Volume 10. I don't know what episode this is. We've lost count. Of 124 East Main. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a most cordial welcome to the show. I am Ian Ozan. Happy you are here with us. The phone number not on the screen yet. It is, as we are doing this live, it is October the 15th, 2017. The phone number will be on the screen shortly at 366-8951. That's in the fashionable 337 area code. We had as you just saw, we just did an impromptu frottoir jam. Again, all we need is an accordion now, maybe a drum set, a bass, and we'd be able to do a full-on jam. Jake, why are you so dressed up tonight?
Well, we're gonna shoot some pics of Paul and myself to basically animate.
Animate.
Yeah, I think he's gonna chop up our body parts and make us kind of movie. And
Sort of like it's like Celebrity Deathmatch, claymation or stop motion or something like that.
Maybe kind of like Tom Goes to the Mayor. I don't know if you saw that.
I have not.
Adult Swim show yet.
No.
I'll actually be right back.
The only Adult Swim show that I can recall seeing, aside from, well, actually two of them, Mike Tyson Mysteries, and the original Adult Swim show, Space Goes Coast to Coast, which, by the way, folks, is underrated. If you have not seen Space Goes Coast to Coast, or if you've just not watched it in many years, do yourself a favor and go on YouTube and take a look at some old school Space Goes Coast to Coast. Yes, it's weird. Yes, it may be 20 years old, but it still holds up even to this day. Space Goes Coast to Coast. Let's see. Richard Wilbur, breaking news coming in. Richard Wilbur, the Pulitzer Prize-winning poet and translator who intrigued and delighted generations of readers and theatergoers, has died. That is according to the Associated Press. May he rest in peace. 366-8951 is the phone number for those of you who do want to get in. Quick note, a little bit of housekeeping. We are off, not next week, but the week after that. We were going to do a Halloween show, but we got tickets to the Saints game, so we're going to go to the Saints game instead. So no show in 2 weeks. We'll be here next week. We won't be here a week after that. We will be back here to kick off standard time. Daylight saving time will be over when we return from our 1 week hiatus. So hopefully by then we'll be better rested, and hopefully by then that extra hour of sleep that we'll get will be will help us be a little bit more rejuvenated when we come here. So again, we're here next week. Next week is, if today is the 15th, next week's the 22nd. We won't be here the 29th. We will be here on let's see. Next week's the 22nd, the 29th. 30, 31, the 1st is a Wednesday, 2nd, 3rd's a Friday, 4, 5. We'll be here November 5th. November 5th, that is the day we will be back here. Boy, we just got to get all this math stuff down, Pat. Once all of that is squared away, we're okay. But again, we'll be off for a couple weeks, but we will be back. We'll get to the Facebook questions in just a second, Bert. Once we get through all the housekeeping we have here. But again, here next week, off the week following, and back on November the 5th. The Christmas show is coming up December the 17th. We will be here, or I should say we won't be here. Santa Claus, rather, will be here December the 17th, and Santa Claus will be taking gift requests from the kids. Again, we'll be live from the North Pole. I'll be off. Santa Claus will be here. That's Sunday night, rather, December the 17th, from 6 until 7, a special edition of 124 East Main, Santa Claus Live. Back in the day, Santa used to do the Talkmeisters. Since Mark Pope retired from his show, Santa has been gracious enough to continue his appearances here on 124 East Main. So, again, for those of you who may not see Santa in the mall once he sets up shop in North Pole South, or if you have kids who want to get in last-minute Christmas requests, we're going to do it December the 17th. Some of you may be asking yourselves, why aren't you doing it on Christmas Eve? Since, of course, Christmas Eve falls on a Sunday this year. Of course, Santa Claus will be traveling by then with time zone differences. Santa Claus will be circling the globe, and by the time it's 6 p.m. on Christmas Eve here, it'll be midnight elsewhere in the world. It'll be Christmas, so Santa will be in the midst of making deliveries. As a result, we're doing it a little bit earlier this year. It'll be on the 17th. That's one of the earliest appearances Santa has made here on AOC in the, how long has he been making appearances now? Almost 20 years, I think. It's been a long, long time. But again, that will be December the 17th, so mark your calendars for that. We will be here for that. I'm trying to think of what else. There was one other bit of housekeeping that we needed to attend to, and I'm blanking on it right now. It'll come back to me a little bit later on this evening. Bert checks in via Facebook, says, what do you think about ESPN's mistake that got Mark Hudspeth mad at him? I'm not surprised. It's the worldwide leader. For those of you who missed it, ESPN misidentified the Ragin' Cajuns with the Louisiana College mascot and Louisiana College logo. Mark Hudd called out the worldwide leader on, hi there. Sorry. Called out the worldwide leader on Twitter because of it. But again, it's ESPN. They don't care. We're not in the SEC. Chris Domingue says, hey, Ian, any chance you go Facebook Live for your show? I don't have cable TV. I will respond to that one a little bit later on. Let's see. Let me respond back to him. We go Facebook Live every now and again. Let's see. Too late for this week, but we'll try to go online next week. So there we go. Chris Domingue checking in. At the very least, someone's interested in watching the show. That's good news. So, again, we will try to go Facebook Live next week for the show. But going back to Bert's question, it's ESPN. I'm not terribly surprised, but it is... It's disappointing that the worldwide leader, after all these years, still doesn't know a Ragin' Cajun from a leopard from Lafayette College in Easton, Pennsylvania, from a Wildcat at Louisiana College in Pineville. And HUD has a right to be angry. I don't know if it's an intern who's making the errors. These people are getting paid better than intern money, but it is what it is. Considering the fact that our friends over at the Worldwide Leader have been battling this problem for God knows how long, you would think they would have corrected it by now, but that's a whole other story. Off of the Ragin'. By the way, speaking of the Ragin' Cajuns, they've been playing much better ball lately. Congratulations to them on their win against Texas State. They wound up getting a 24-7 victory over Texas State Thursday night. The defense played spectacularly. James Willis, he's back in the fold. He is a defensive analyst. He can't coach, by NCAA rule, can't coach the team during practices, but whatever he's doing in the booth during games, whatever he's seeing, whenever he's helping the coaching staff do is working. Hopefully that'll set the scene for him returning as defensive coordinator next year. We'll have to wait and see. 366-8951. New Orleans Saints football today. Holy Toledo. Early in the game, I was wondering what the New Orleans Saints, or what happened to the New Orleans Saints that we saw in weeks 1 and 2, that couldn't get an offense going, couldn't do anything on defense, was just sputtering around. The Saints today, in the first half, were unstoppable. Then they kind of played, I shouldn't say kind of, they half-heartedly played the second half and almost gave the game away to Detroit, but they wound up finding a way to win. 3 defensive touchdowns in a game for the New Orleans Saints. That's the first time in New Orleans Saints history that has happened, where the Saints defense wound up scoring 3 touchdowns in a single game. I'm stunned, quite frankly, that the Saints defense did what it did today. Now, granted, the Saints secondary still can't tackle to save its life. The New Orleans Saints secondary couldn't bring down Golden Tate to save their lives. The Saints secondary acted as if it were playing two-hand touch for most of the game. But the linebacking core and the defensive line did more than enough. Let's see. Robertson came up with an interception. Cam Jordan had an interception for a touchdown in the end zone. Was it Cam Jordan with the sack, forced fumble, and recovery in the end zone for the Saints' first touchdown of the day? I think it was. So the defensive line did enough to build up, to save the defense and to negate anything that the cornerbacks and the safeties couldn't do. It was a wash. And the Saints' offense, well, rough day today. I should say rough day in some departments. After all, the Saints did give up their first turnovers of the season after going 4 straight games without giving up a turnover. The good news, though, is that the Saints hung more than 50 on our friends over in Detroit. So if you're a New Orleans Saints fan, you take today's victory and you celebrate it. For the first time in 4 years, the New Orleans Saints are above 500. You heard that right. For the first time since week 17 of the 2013 season, the New Orleans Saints are above 500. They're 3-2. They're a half game back of the Carolina Panthers in the NFC South. The Panthers are 4-2. The Saints are 3-2. The Saints, because of their victory over the Panthers, have the tiebreak over the Atlanta Falcons, who somehow managed to crap the bed today and lose to the Miami Dolphins after leading 17-0 at the half. The Atlanta Falcons lost today, which hurt me in my pick'em pool. But anyway, the Falcons lost. They're 3-2. The Saints, because they are 1-0 in division play, and because the Falcons are 0-1, the Falcons are 0-0 in the division. The Saints have the tiebreak. They're in second place right now in the division, a half a game behind the Carolina Panthers, who did pick up a victory today. The Panthers lost on Thursday night, rather. The Panthers lost to the Philadelphia Eagles, who right now the Eagles are looking absolutely phenomenal right now. If you're an Eagles fan, or if you know someone who's an Eagles fan, it's certainly a good time for you, or a good time for whoever is an Eagles fan. And again, if you're a New Orleans Saints fan right now, you've got to be hopeful for what the rest of the season will bring, considering the fact the Saints are now above 500. It's been a long time coming, a lot of suffering the last couple years. And you may have heard a sound about 4 o'clock this afternoon after the game went final. A slight stomping noise in the distance. That's the sound of New Orleans Saints fans who are running to jump on the bandwagon. To those of you who decided to boycott the New Orleans Saints because you decided to boycott the NFL because of the protests during the national anthem for players kneeling, then boy, you missed a great game today, and you're missing a great New Orleans Saints season. You can change your mind about the boycotts, by the way. Speaking of Colin Kaepernick, filing a grievance, or expected to file a grievance, against the NFL for collusion under the collective bargaining agreement. He has hired attorney Mark Garagos, yep, that Mark Garagos, the same one who worked with Michael Jackson, among others, to work his case. All you need to prove the case of collusion is Brian Hoyer, the guy that the 49ers released Colin Kaepernick for. He got benched today. C.J. Beathard wound up taking the quarterback role after Hoyer got benched. So you mean to tell me that you've got a Miami team that winds up getting Kristen Cavallari's husband to come back and play quarterback for them, Jay Cutler. There we go. They get Jay Cutler to come back and play quarterback for them after he had retired and signed a contract to be a commentator for Fox. They pass up Kaepernick. The 49ers released Kaepernick for 2 relatively substandard quarterbacks. You've got other quarterbacks who are injured. You look at Aaron Rodgers, who went down today. I highly doubt the Green Bay Packers are going to make a call to Colin Kaepernick, though right now they should. The NFL is probably hoping that the Green Bay Packers just pick him up to get rid of the collusion suit. But the facts remain that Colin Kaepernick, a quarterback who just 3 or 4 years ago led his team to the Super Bowl, is without a job right now. And it's probably for no other reason than the fact that he brought some bad PR to the NFL. And if this collusion suit goes forward, I'm hoping that the NFL owners pay dearly for making him the black sheep of the football family, if you will. There's no reason why Kaepernick should not be in the league right now, considering some of the other quarterbacks who are playing, considering some of the injuries that we've seen over the course of the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season. Yes, you can say that Kaepernick was on a downward swing before he got released from San Francisco, but the fact of the matter is, he is still a better quarterback than Jay Cutler. He is still a better quarterback than Brian Hoyer. He's a better quarterback than C.J. Beathard. The guy's a proven leader. The guy's a man who has led a team to a Super Bowl and a man who took over a team from a quarterback after he got injured. The 49ers were Kaepernick's team. And the fact of the matter is, the 49ers are a team right now that's in disarray. It's a team that's rudderless. It's a rudderless ship. The coaching situation there is a poor one. The front office management's a poor one. They made a bad mistake in letting Kaepernick go, but they did it for reasons of PR, not because of playing, and as a result, they've allowed their franchise to suffer. And NFL owners who've refused to pick up Kaepernick are now, for reasons aside from football, are about to figure out that Kaepernick is not one who lays down. Speaking of NFL player protests, and of course there's still folks who are boycotting the NFL because of said player protests. If you're going to boycott the NFL because players dare take a knee before or during the playing of the national anthem, if you're going to boycott the NFL because of the opinions of players, that's your prerogative. But I have to ask, are we now going to boycott the White House, the presidency, and Donald Trump because of his disrespect for the flag and the national anthem? In case you missed it, this past Thursday. This past Thursday night, the president was being interviewed by Sean Hannity on Fox News. He was at a military base. I'll come back to that in a second. President Trump was being interviewed by Sean Hannity at a military base in Pennsylvania. Granted, they were inside and they were in an airport hangar, but they were still at a military base nonetheless. During the interview, now mind you, this is a pre-taped interview. During the interview, retreat began. The bugle call for retreat started playing. For those of you who aren't familiar, retreat is done at the end of the business day on Army bases and other military bases around the world to signal the end of the day's affairs. It's when the flag is lowered. At that point, all members of the Army, everyone on the base, will stop, will stand at attention, and salute the flag as it is being lowered. Again, I will preface this by saying the president was indoors, and as a result did not have to stop and did not have to stand or salute the flag, again, because he's indoors. If you're indoors, you don't have to, according to military protocol. However, the president, as retreat began, did not stand. Instead, he wound up talking through retreat and asking Sean Hannity, are they playing that bugle call for me or for your ratings? Again, I know because he was inside, he didn't have to stand for retreat. Because under military protocol, he was in an airport hangar, he was under a roof. He did not have to stand and salute the flag or pay respect to the retreat. But as the President of the United States, I would expect the President to know what retreat is. After all, you are the Commander-in-Chief. You may be a civilian, but you still are the Commander-in-Chief. I would expect the President to know what retreat is. I would expect the President to know that when retreat is played, even if you are in an airport hangar, even if you are indoors technically, that you stop momentarily. Even if you do remain seated, you stop while the flag is being lowered. I certainly would expect the President not to have the audacity to say before a live camera and a live mic, are they doing that for me or for your ratings? That is a slap in the face to our veterans and to the flag. If you want to make an argument about disrespecting the military and disrespecting the flag, this is where I would think someone would take objection. An NFL player taking a knee during the anthem is one thing. At the very least, taking a knee, you're still at attention, and you're not making a mockery of the anthem. You're not making a mockery of the flag. On a military base, during retreat, sitting, not saluting, and then having the audacity to ask if the retreat was for you is appalling. Donald Trump is so vain that he thought that song was about him. For those of you who justify President Trump making a mockery of the retreat, and with the excuse, oh, he's new at this job. Oh, he's not been in the military, he doesn't know. Oh, he was, whatever excuse you want to come up with. If you're going to excuse Donald Trump for this foolishness, but yet jump on the backs of Colin Kaepernick and other football players and other athletes who've taken a knee to protest injustices in the United States, then you need to take a look at yourself in the mirror. the fact of the matter is, if we're going to critique one person for perceived disrespect to the flag, we got to criticize everybody. So if you're going to criticize Colin Kaepernick and the other NFL players who've taken a knee, if you're going to criticize LeBron James and other NBA players who wore T-shirts that said, hands up, don't shoot, after the Trayvon Martin incident, if you're going to criticize any other athlete who dares to use his or her platform to speak out for social justice or for political reform or for anything else, then you've got to be willing to criticize politicians when they screw up too, when they disrespect the flag and when they disrespect the military. Because what we saw Thursday from President Donald Trump was a smack in the face to our men and women in the armed forces. It was a smack in the face to those who have given their lives. The fact that the president on a military base does not stop and stand for retreat, no matter whether or not he's technically inside a building because he was under a roof at an airport hangar. From the video I saw, the doors were open, the sunlight was coming in. If we're gonna criticize everybody else, then we definitely have to say, what was that, Mr. President? Why did you not stand? Why did you not salute the flag as it was being lowered? Why did you not stop with other members of the military to honor the flag during retreat? If the president's going to be one to call out NBA players and other athletes for kneeling during the anthem, then he needs to stop and look at himself and ask himself, why didn't I stand during retreat? Even Robin Williams, bless his soul, when he was on a military base, it was about 10 years ago, Christmas almost 10 years ago, he was in the middle of his routine when retreat began, and he stopped, removed his hat, and stood at attention for the flag. If a comedian could figure it out, why couldn't our president? 366-8951. And the fact of the matter is, the president this week has been on an equal opportunity offending tour. Not only did he disrespect the military, but now he's also taking a swipe at the First Amendment, threatening to take FCC licenses away from the NBC network because of coverage. Apparently, to quote the insurance commercials, that's not how it works. That's not how any of this works. You want to take licenses away from NBC, you know what you got to do? You've got to take away licenses from each of NBC's 26 owned and operated stations. Then you've got to remove the licenses from other stations that are affiliated with NBC. You know how much of a pain in the ass that's going to be for the FCC to do? So much so that they're not even going to entertain it. And the fact that the FCC chairman, Pai, I forget his first name, Ajit Pai, the fact that this dumbass has not come out and said anything to contradict the president and not say, this is not how this works. The FCC will not review licenses strictly because of news coverage or because of commentaries or what have you, makes me wonder whether or not Pai is afraid that he will be let go, because the FCC commissioners, to an extent, serve at the leisure of the president. Pai got summoned to the White House not too long ago, and I would love to have been a fly on the wall for that conversation. The fact that the president is now threatening to use broadcast licenses as a way to chill the media, as a way to get rid of unfavorable coverage for him, shows you the mindset of this man, shows you the mindset of this president, shows you that he cannot handle any type of criticism, as if the tweets weren't enough, as if his war of words with Bob Corker wasn't enough, as if, what other examples can we give? There are too many of them that we can't name them all. Some people think this guy's got narcissistic personality disorder. Maybe he does. Some people think he's just going senile. Maybe he is. Is it time to invoke the 25th Amendment? Probably, because Congress won't have the intestinal fortitude, if you will, to begin impeachment proceedings. But with some of the reports that have been coming out, with was it Newsweek last week or was it the New York Times? I forget who reported it, about the defense meetings, the meetings on North Korea that took place in July, during which Rex Tillerson reportedly called 45 a quote, moron, was because Donald Trump said aloud more than once during these meetings that he wanted to build up America's nuclear arsenal. He wanted to essentially resume the arms race. He wanted to begin stockpiling nukes, which of course would lead to China and Russia doing the same. Today on Face the Nation on CBS, John Dickerson asked Secretary of State Rex Tillerson point blank, or no, it was State of the Union with Jake Tapper, in which Tillerson was asked point blank, did you call President Trump a moron? And Tillerson gave a non-answer answer in which he said, I won't get into that foolishness, which, yes, he did. If he didn't, he would outright deny it. But if Rex Tillerson has reason to be scared that 45 is off his rocker, that he is, quote unquote, a moron, if there are others in this administration who are worried about this man's sanity, why have they not begun the process of removing him? Then again, maybe he shouldn't. After all, the folks who wanted Trump deserve the government they get. That's as best as I can say. I forget who said it. People get the government they deserve. Maybe this is the government we deserve. Maybe the people who wanted to, quote unquote, drain the swamp. Maybe the people who wanted to put these hardline conservatives in, who wanted to put folks with inexperience in office. Maybe they need this. Maybe they need to see 4 years worth of this and see everything get blown to pieces to understand the mistake that they made. Maybe insurance premiums do need to skyrocket with Trump blowing up Obamacare to realize that none of these people had their best interest in mind. Or maybe it'll happen sooner. Maybe next year during re-elections, people will realize that this current Congress isn't doing anything. They failed to repeal and replace Obamacare. Republicans ran on a campaign promise they knew they couldn't fulfill. Now let's see if they can get tax reform done. Tax reform. I use that term loosely. And when they fail with that, then people will realize that they elected a bunch of do-nothings. They elected a bunch of know-nothings. The next year is going to be interesting because we are a year away from the start from the congressional midterms. What happens over the course of the next 12 to 13 months maybe what happens over that time will wake people up. Maybe people will begin seeing that this notion of draining the swamp, this notion of good government that people have, isn't really a good notion. It was Joseph de Maistre who said, every country has the government it deserves. In a democracy, people get the leaders they deserve. Well, I wonder if that's the case here in the United States. We got the government and the leaders we deserve. To quote a good friend of mine, what a time to be alive. 366-8951. We've got about 20 minutes remaining in the show. Wallace is checking in. Good evening, Wallace.
How's everything going, E?
Everything's going all right, man. How are you?
Oh, man, I'm hanging in there. I'm just kind of sitting back right now, watching you, thinking about going and get me a nice big piece of homemade cake and sit back and just relax.
Well, if you do, have an extra piece for me, because I got to cut back.
Okay. I could use it for a couple of days, but I'm not the one that really do it.
Right.
But anyway, look here, man, everything that you're bringing up tonight, you know, I like the topics that you're talking about because Kaepernick, me, it goes a long way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the injustice, the selfishness that I'm pretty sure it happened for the NFL players. I remember coming up, man, NFL, NBA, they all had to be role models.
Right.
And somewhere down the line, the role model changed. The long hairs, the tattoos.
Charles Barkley, I am not a role model.
Right. You know, so all those things that I guess they had to go through that. Kaepernick had a what you call back in the 80s, big natural.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they might have been getting on him for that. You see?
Yeah.
So all these things fall in place. You know, when you're talking about Donald Trump had never held the office before.
Mm-hmm.
Not even in the city that he lived in.
Right.
But he had businesses going. So he don't know. He never been in the service. He don't know nothing about being the commander-in-chief.
Mm-hmm.
But the people elected him, or the electoral college elected him because he was a businessman.
Right.
And all he's doing is just like when President Obama first got in office. Donald Trump chased President Obama's birth certificate.
Yep.
You know, which he never found. He even got back in office, and he kind of backed up off of it. Now he got in office. What he's trying to do, tear everything that President Obama did to bring other countries together, and make things happen for us, you know, with other countries. And what is President Trump doing right now? Trying to tear all of that down, man.
Exactly.
And that's not going to help us. That's not helping us as the American people. You know what I mean?
Right.
But all those that's hoorahing him and saluting him and thinking he's the man, more peace be with him.
Yeah.
But as far as I'm concerned, all these people are doing like the Antichrist in the Bible say do. You know, so look here, man, keep up that good work, man. I like to hear you talk, man, you know, because you're not a one-sided person. You tell it just like it is, for justice, not injustice. All right, my
Thank you,
brother.
Wallace.
You'll have me back later.
You too. Appreciate you calling in. Thanks for the kind words. We appreciate it.
Right on, okay.
All right, take care. Bye-bye. And don't forget, Wallace, have an extra piece of cake for me if you are going to go grab a piece of cake. 366-8951 is the phone number. And as Wallace was talking, it dawned on me. This is something that I looked up back when Trump was first inaugurated, back in January. Trump is the first United States president in history not to have held any elective office prior to winning, or not to have been a military general. If you think back to every single president we've had, going back to the beginning with George Washington, every president has met the criteria of either having previously held elective office or serving as a general in the Army. Eisenhower was not an elected official before he served. He was a general in the Army, then became president of Columbia University, and then became president of the United States. Washington obviously was never an elected official before becoming president. Aside from them, and William Henry Harrison, I don't think he was an elected official, but he was a military leader. Aside from them, everybody else who ever held the office of presidency had some elected office at some other level, whether it was local, state, or federal. Trump does not, and I think that speaks to some of what we're seeing now. And again, agree with the politics of a George W. Bush or even a Barack Obama, or if we want to go farther back to Bill Clinton and into H.W. and to Ronald Reagan, and I'll stop it right there. Let's go back 30 years. Reagan was a president that to this day remains divisive in some circles. George H.W. Bush, I think history has treated him more kindly has treated him more kindly since he's left office. Bill Clinton, again, another guy who's still somewhat divisive. George W. Bush and Barack Obama, we don't need to say anything about them. But if you look at those 5 presidents, and I'll throw Jimmy Carter in here too, because he still remains divisive and he's still living. So let me at least go back to to our oldest living president, and that's James Earl Carter. James Earl Carter was he an admiral? I forget what his rank in the Navy was, but he was a commissioned officer in the Navy. Then he became a member of then he became a Georgia congressman and then later governor of Georgia. The Peanut Man had both military and experience as an elected official. There we go. Ronald Reagan served as governor of California. Before that was the president of the Screen Actors Guild, which, while not an elected official, at the very least, the man before becoming governor of California had experience of leading a group of people towards a common goal. George H.W. Bush, a member of the Army. I believe he was Army Air Force, if I'm not mistaken. He was an Army pilot. He had military experience. Later became a legislator. Then was a U.S. ambassador, director of the CIA, was the vice president, then president. He had service as a federal official. Again, leading departments. He knew how to lead people towards a common good. Bill Clinton, governor of Arkansas. Same thing. George W. Bush, successful businessman, was president of, or part owner, was he president of the Texas Rangers, I think? Governor of Texas, then president of the United States. Once again, he knew how to deal with people, knew how to deal with governments. Barack Obama, say what you will about him, but he at least served 4 years in the Senate. He knew the ins and outs of government. Donald Trump does not. The man ran the Trump Organization, played with, he lost some of his money, but he also played with other people's money. And while he wants folks to think of the Trump Organization as this giant conglomerate that employs hundreds and thousands of people, it doesn't. Maybe dozens and dozens might be appropriate. And instead of leading people towards a common good, he was looking to make only one person rich and famous, and that was himself. Before being elected president, Donald Trump only had to look out for himself, only had to look out for his children, only had to look out for his wife at the time. Donald Trump never had experience of trying to get a legislative body to work cohesively. He never had to unite hundreds of thousands or millions of people towards a common goal, towards the Commonwealth, rather, if you will, as Kentucky and Virginia might put it. And therein lies her up. Say what you will about Hillary Clinton. At the very least, she understood how government works. She wasn't a great candidate for president, but at least she had that. Gary Johnson, the libertarian, was governor of New Mexico 2 terms. A Republican governor in a Democratic state. Who'd have thunk it? Or was it Democratic governor in a Republican state? I don't remember. But again, at the very least, he had experience of getting legislatures to work together and bonding people of different backgrounds and cultures and uniting them for a common goal. That is where our current president is lacking. Forget all the stuff about his mental instability. The biggest problem with the president is the fact that he is in it for one reason and one reason only, and that's himself. And as the president, you cannot be that way. You cannot, when you are the president of the United States, for that matter, when you're the governor of Louisiana or any other state, when you're the mayor of a city, when you're looking out for number one, you're not looking out for yourself. Number one is the populace, the body that elected you. And it seems that the highest elected official in this country does not understand that. He does not understand that when he wakes up in the morning, that when he's looking out for number one, that number one is the country from sea to shining sea. It's apparent whenever the president tweets out that the United States military can't stay in Puerto Rico forever, that he doesn't understand what looking out for number one in the context of being president is. When the president tells the folks in the Virgin Islands, have fun, good luck, it's apparent he doesn't understand what number one is in terms of the president of the United States. When Donald Trump says that he spoke with the president of the Virgin Islands when he visited there, not realizing that he is the president of the Virgin Islands, he obviously does not understand what number one in the context of being president is. When you are the president of the United States, or for that matter, when you're any other elected official, when you're looking out for number one is your people. Number one is your constituents. Number one is your district, your city, your state, your country. And the president of the United States obviously does not understand that at the end of the day, this job is about the country and not himself. That is what's scary about this. I wasn't a fan of Trump when he ran, and I didn't vote for him. But I was at least willing to give him a shot. After all, this is a country. We live and die, succeed and fail by the actions of our president and our Congress. And while I wasn't overly thrilled that Trump won the Electoral College, I was at least willing to give him a shot. In the 9 months now that he's been in office, it's apparent that he is not fit for this office. It's apparent that he cannot do this job. It's apparent that this is merely a stage show for him, that this is just another edition of The Apprentice and we are all his audience. Instead of being televised on NBC, he's being televised by everybody and their mama. Gil Scott-Heron was right. The revolution won't be televised, but unfortunately this disaster is being televised. We're witness to it every day. And the fact there's certain members of Congress who are willing to go to bat for the president because they're scared of their own base, they're scared of losing a re-election if they don't stand by this president, makes me wonder even more about our Congress and our federally elected officials. Again, time will tell whether or not Washington, D.C. will get its act together. Washington, D.C. for the better part of the last 10 years has just been a mess. We'll see in the next 13 months if D.C. can get its act together. And I'm not just talking about Congress, I'm talking about everybody, from the cabinet to the president to Congress and everyone in between. Because if not, we may see a whole bunch of turnover come next year in Congress. Not just on the Republican side, but also on the Democratic side, because quite frankly, the Democratic Party hasn't done crap either. And that's the problem with American politics right now. You got a Republican Party that has finally attained the power that it's been seeking for the longest time. It finally has the presidency in both houses of Congress, and they don't know what to do with that power. Meanwhile, the Democrats are twiddling their thumbs trying to figure out how to counteract it and how to solve the problems they're in right now. Well, the problem is the Republicans don't care about anybody else. The Democratic Party is just coasting, or I should say the leaders of the Democratic Party in Congress are just coasting right now, trying to save their hides. That's unacceptable. The Democratic Party, and especially the voters of the Democratic Party, have to demand more from their leaders, from their elected officials. Members of the Republican Party, voters in the Republican Party, have to demand that their elected officials actually do something in Congress and not just grandstand. Because while they're fiddling, the rest of the United States is burning. Health premiums are going to skyrocket. Corporations will continue to get tax breaks while average Americans will continue to get taxed out the wazoo. And more people will wind up falling into a money trap. More people will fall into debt because they cannot find jobs that will pay them a living wage. We've got so many issues here in the United States that aren't being addressed by Congress right now because the Democrats and Republicans right now are having a pissing contest, really. That's what it amounts to. I would hope a third party comes around, but I ain't going to hold my breath on that one. As Robin Williams used to say, we brag about how we have choice in the United States. We're only one party better than the old Soviet Union. We're only one party better than China, one party better than Cuba. Two-party system, that ain't much of a choice. It could work if the parties actually did what they used to do and worked to find solutions. If they came together, worked across the aisle to get something done. We can't compromise anymore. We can't compromise. We got to stick to our guns. Oh, bull. Because in at least the last 10 years, going back to the last 2 years of W's administration, Congress has been stonewalling and hasn't been doing anything just to spite the sitting president. And now that the Republicans control all facets of D.C., from the House to the Senate to the White House, it's not that they're stonewalling, it's that they're so incompetent they can't get anything accomplished. That promise to make America great again? Certainly not working. If you're the praying kind, say a prayer. Go light a candle for this country. It needs it. Not necessarily because the country's in bad shape. It's not. The United States will survive. It survived much worse than this. That said, I don't know if we've ever seen I don't know if this nation has seen a confederacy of dunces as dense as our current leadership in Washington. I don't even know if we can call our folks in D.C. leadership because they're not taking an active role in leading. But again, a country gets the government it deserves, and a democracy gets the leaders it deserves. Words that were spoken more than 200 years ago are ringing true today here in the United States. So maybe we were destined to wind up where we are now. We'll have to wait and see. Again, 13 months till congressional midterms. We are another 2.5 years away from a presidential, or 3 years away from a presidential election. So a year away now from midterms, and 3 years away from a presidential election. Let's see what happens between now and then. Again, this country will survive. I'm not worried about that. That is unless President Trump doesn't provoke Kim Jong-un with one of his tweets. All right, that'll do it for us. God willing, and if the checks don't bounce, we'll see you back here next week here on 124 East Main. I forgot what show I was doing. I forgot. We do a radio show too, and we nearly called it that. We'll see you back here next Sunday night here on 124 East Main. I'll be here. I trust you'll be here as well. Stay tuned. I'm not sure what's next here on AOC. I don't know if Voices of African Americans is on tonight. I don't know if Community Defender is on. If they are, you'll see them at the top of the hour. If they're not, you'll see some other great programming. So just stay tuned. You'll see what's coming on. But we will see you back here next week. We do know that for certain. Anybody on after us tonight?
Actually, Community Defender is a rerun.
Okay, so Voices will be live at 8 o'clock. The Community Defender rerun is coming up next at 7 o'clock. here on AOC. That'll do it. Again, we'll see you back here next Sunday night here on AOC. Until we do meet again, I'm Ian Ozan reminding you, don't take life too seriously. We're not getting out alive anyway. We still have a minute left in the show. So, Jake, do you have a final word?
One of my favorites I've used as a final word probably on your show before. All the good in the world comes from wishing good for others, and all the evil in the world comes from wishing good for oneself.
I like that.
Chinese, man. They're smart.
Always remember, no matter where you go, there you are. There's that one.
We just fade you for 30 seconds real slow.
Let's see. No, one more closing word. One of my favorites, because he was on the radio. He lives on on tape. Oh, I'm Casey Kasem reminding you, keep your feet on the ground and keep reaching for the stars. American Top 40 is brought to you by the Westwood One Radio Network. All right, that's it. Good night, everybody.